This is really good, isn't it? I'm pleased to see there's at least 10 of you. No, it's excellent. What I thought I'd do is I'd just give you a little bit of a tale in the life of Bomber Command. Typically Lincolnshire here, known as Bomber County for a very, very important reason. That was at the height of the Second World War. There was an airfield every 8 miles, and that's really quite incredible. Beautiful flat open county. But it does mean that what would happen is that a farmer who thought he'd be dealing with the Ministry of Food would basically have a knock on his door, and there'd be 2 gentlemen there from the Air Ministry, and they'd say, "We have some money for you, we're requisitioning your farm, and you have 48 hours to vacate before we start building an airfield." And they would actually turn up with bulldozers sometimes at the same time as chucking them out. So that must have come as quite a shock to those people. Once those airfields were established, of course, in came Bomber Command and in came those crews. And what I wanted to do was just to, before we see this wonderful film, was just to give you an idea of what those crews would go for. Now typically, Lancaster Bomber will pick on, because obviously that's the lovely lady that I deal with on a weekly basis. You would have a crew of 7. From the front you would have your bomb aimer, who is also your front gunner. He's got a dual role. Coming back, left-hand side, that's where the boss sits, the pilot, the skipper, okay? Interestingly, could be a lower rank than the rest of the crew, but he still has the final word. Now, to his right, it's commonly mistook to be a co-pilot. It is not a co-pilot, it's a flight engineer, okay? He may have done a little bit of training to be able to hold the Lancaster straight level if the pilot's incapacitated, but he's not a pilot, okay? Behind him, in probably the largest working area on the aircraft, curtained off from the front, is your navigator. And I do find it so ironic that the one person who can't see out is the navigator. Behind the navigator, we have the wireless operator, the wireless operator. And now you climb over the infamous main spar that I'm sure you've all heard about, that caused so many problems within the fuselage, and you're going down to the coldest parts of the aircraft, and that's where you have your 2 gunners, your mid-upper gunner and your tail gunner. Well, as you can imagine, winter in Lincolnshire, if you've not experienced it before, can be perishingly cold. It can be minus 15 degrees centigrade on the ground. But how cold is it in the air? Well, obviously, Lancaster Bomber is an unpressurised aircraft, so you're fed oxygen over 10,000 feet. And in places, the fuselage is what they call 16 gauge thick, which is basically 1.6 millimetres in modern terms. So whatever the temperature is outside is the temperature inside. So for instance, if it's 0 degrees centigrade at ground level, for every 1,000 feet you climb, you lose 1 to 2 degrees centigrade. So typically, if you're bombing at 20,000 feet, it's minus 40 degrees centigrade, okay? Now, how did they combat the cold? Well, as you all know, Percy is a gunner, so I was going to focus on Tail End Charlie for this particular part of the talk. Now, he would have 3 pairs of socks on, he would have 3 pairs of gloves on, different thicknesses, of course. He would have silk underwear on if he could get hold of it, very good insulator. He would have long johns on, he would have the thick woolen serge battle dress uniform that you've all seen, okay? Over the top of that, he would have either the full Irving trousers and Irving jackets, or he might have a suit made for the purpose, such as a Sidcut suit or a tailor suit, which were 2 slightly different designs. And these were fantastic because they could be electrically heated, which is brilliant while it works. Because unfortunately, as you'll have seen from the tail, the turret is very, very small, and getting in and out of that turret involves a lot of constriction of your body, which would sometimes break those heating elements in the suit. So consequently, your right leg, where the elements are broken, has your toes going black and frostbite happily setting in, and your left leg, where all the 24 volts current of the aircraft is going, is smoking and on fire. And this did happen. A mid-upper gunner told me that he looked back to see the tail turret full of smoke and realised that he hadn't been hit, it was his own suit burning. But we're still not finished dressing him. He needs some other important things. We've already talked about being on oxygen above 10,000 feet, so we have a flying helmet, earphone receivers in, we have an oxygen mask on, okay? And a very savvy aircrew member is the one who every now and again has a little crimp of that oxygen tube, because of course, as you breathe out in those sub-zero temperatures, your breath will condense, water droplets form inside the tube, and then they freeze. And it wasn't uncommon not to hear from one of your gunners for 20 minutes or so, only to find him slumped over the guns with full unconsciousness, having had his own oxygen supply cut off by his own exhaled breath. Okay, quite incredible. Another tip, if you're flying in minus 40 degrees centigrade, it's not a bad idea to perhaps put a pair of goggles on, because your eyeballs will freeze open at that temperature, and it's quite important to be able to blink and have your tear ducts working properly. Okay. But we're still not finished dressing him, because of course he needs another couple of vital things. One is a flotation device, a life preserver, a Mae West as they were known. And you might wonder, how did they get the name Mae West? Well, if you stand sideways, you're ahead of me, and you fully inflate it, you have two very impressive flotation devices. I won't say any more. Also, last but not least, of course, the parachute. We need to have a parachute. But you can imagine that by the time you're in that turret, by the time you've got the guns in there, the turret, of course, is as small as possible to be the least target to the night fighters. You've got bullets being fed through from the interior of the fuselage. And, of course, you've got this poor old guy in there with all this gear on. There isn't enough room for his parachute. So he wears what they call the observer's harness, two big clone clips on it, and his parachute is stowed near to his working position. And, in fact, all the crew and the pilot in some cases just wear the observer's harness and the parachute's down by their side. But poor old short straw tail end Charlie, all this stuff's in there, there isn't any room for his parachute. So where's his parachute? Well, it's locked away from him because you have his rear turret doors shut, of course, so he can rotate properly. No, it's back in the fuselage where he can't get at it. So what does he do if he has to bail out? Well, we're going to have to assume an awful lot of things first. Let's assume that the aircraft is flying straight and level. Let's assume the aircraft isn't inverted, so everything he's going to do, he's going to have to do upside down. Let's assume it's not in a 4G spin, so his arm weighs the weight it should do, and is not 4 times its own body weight. Let's assume, of course, he's unhurt and he's conscious. Let's assume that the turret will still rotate, that the night fighter attack hasn't jammed the turret and he can still actually move the turret. Let's assume he still has rotational power, either hydraulic or electric, so the turret will rotate under power. If so, 2.5 seconds you can rotate through 90 degrees. Pretty good. If not, it's a little hand wind job, and it's a handle like that, and it takes 20 seconds to rotate through 90 degrees. And you've got about 90 seconds if your aeroplane is on fire, and of course we're assuming the aeroplane isn't on fire, and let's be honest, if it's being shot down, it is going to be on fire. You've got about 90 seconds before the vapour in your fuel tanks will help your aircraft to explode. This is what he does. He rotates the turret to the boarding position, so that's with the rear turret doors facing up the fuselage. He opens those turret doors and he reaches out and retrieves his chute, which is just here. As he brings the chute in, he protects the D-ring with the inside of his arm, because of course, if the D-ring catches on the gun mechanism, pulls it open early, that's not something we want to happen, all right? He clips the chute on, and bear in mind the parachute is the size of a handbag. It's not the big chute that goes on your back that skydivers wear, it's a little one about that big, okay? Can be clipped on either way round. So he clips that on, and now he has a brief look out of his turret to see which way the fire is coming down the fuselage. If it's starboard, remember, his port is the pilot's starboard, so if it's starboard, it's on this side, if it's port, it's on this side, okay? He has a look, right, fire is on the starboard side, so we rotate this way. We don't bother shutting those turret doors, no need. We lean backwards, and we make sure our helmet is gone, our oxygen mask goes, and we let go. Now, bear in mind, he could be at 16,000 feet, so there's 6,000 feet where he can't breathe properly. And he'll be bailing out into roughly somewhere around 140, 150 mile an hour slipstream, okay? So as he goes, he hopes, first of all, he doesn't smack himself on the turret, knock himself out and fall to his death. That as he goes, that he doesn't get caught in the slipstream, his legs wrap themselves underneath the gun mechanism, even brakes, and he goes down with the aircraft. That as he goes, he doesn't catch the D-ring on the turret or the gun mechanism. It starts to inflate, which of course the slipstream will happily let it do, and it catches itself on the turret or around the guns, part of the tailplane, and it goes down with the aircraft. Okay? And last but not least, is he right-handed or is he left-handed? Because after he clipped that chute on in that adrenaline-fueled rush, if he's clipped it on, the D-ring is there, and he's left-handed, the arm that protected the chute in the first place is now stopping it from having the 3 press studs pop open, the bungees rip it open nice and wide, drogue chute, main canopy inflates, and you descend to Earth safely. The rest of the crew said he had the easiest way out of the aircraft. And if I tell you that for every Lancaster shot down, less than 2 crew members survived, that's how difficult an aircraft it is to get out of. Now, what I'd like to do before you see the film, I want you to take you all into a day in Bomber Command, okay? You are all aircrew. You're all volunteers. You had to volunteer to fly. You could be conscripted into the RAF, but not onto an aeroplane. Ladies, please do forgive me, you're all blokes, all right? Okay? The only thing that women didn't do in the Second World War was fight. Everything else, but they didn't fight. It wasn't felt chivalrous to send a woman into combat. But everything else you could do. They'd have women mechanic fitters out on dispersals, and I wouldn't mess with a woman wielding a spanner at -15 degrees, I'll tell you that. Your day will go like this. You will go out and you'll have a look at your Lancaster on your dispersal. You'll have a chat to the ground crew. They are the best of friends with you. Don't ever believe they didn't get on. They used to go out drinking together. The only difference was the ground crew bought the drinks, the air crew got the drinks bought for them. All right? Okay? You take it for a 20-minute, 30-minute air test. You bring your aircraft back down. Again, if something's wrong, you have a word with the ground crew, get it sorted out for the night's raid. Now, some of you are pilots, some of you are navigators, wireless operators, gunners, etc. Okay? Now, if you're a gunner, okay, your training will have lasted anything up to about 6 months. Okay? If you're a nav or a pilot, it could be 1.5 to 2 years. So you could have signed on in 42 and not even reach operational status till 44. I find that quite incredible. Okay? You may have been to Canada to do it. Well, your pilot's name, if you're not the pilot, is on the battle order, which means you're flying tonight. Great, fantastic. You're finally going to go and get your chance to do what you've been trained to do, what you've been itching to do, but you are very, very scared. But of course, you're not going to tell the rest of your crew members that, because nobody wants to spook crew, particularly on a first trip. The rest of the morning will be yours. You'll go and get some lunch, and about mid-afternoon, a big booming tannoy announcement will echo across the airfield. All aircrew to flights, please. All aircrew to flights. At which point, you'll go to the briefing room, and there'll be about 800 of you in that briefing room. And it will stink of mould, it will stink of sweat, it will stink of avgas and hydraulic fluid. Sweaty men, all right, okay? And there'll be a very definite nervousness in there. Where are we going? Where are we going? The curtains will, just like this, be across the target area. Gentlemen, your target for tonight is Berlin. There'll be a massive groan will now emit across the room. The crews that have been before are thinking, great, Berlin, capital city of the Third Reich. Just imagine how well defended Berlin is going to be. All right? Okay? They'll take you through everything. They will take you through the intelligence. The intelligence officer will get up there. You'll be given your departure time, your dispersal time. Okay? You'll be given the time you have to taxi out. Remember, there's a lot of Lancasters there. They're all going to be moving under their own power. You'll be taken through how long it's going to take. And this particular trip's going to take you 6 hours and 57 minutes because, of course, you fly a dogleg course. You do not go straight to Berlin, go and collect £200. You literally have to go a roundabout way, okay? And there are at least 2 turning points on your way there because, of course, you're trying to convince the Germans that it's any one of 6 cities that you're aiming at tonight, because the longer they're confused, the less time they have to muster the night fighters, which obviously are going to be scrambled to go up there to intercept you, okay? They'll take you through all of that. They'll take you through flat positions and everything. The Met man will get up. Poor old Met man. Okay? You will take the mickey out of the Met man like there's no tomorrow. Everything he says, you cheer. All right? Why is that? Because poor old Met man's squadron's been over to Berlin and he's had a look at what the weather's doing. He's took barometric pressure readings at different altitudes. He's worked out the icing levels. He's worked out where you're going to be at risk. But by the time you're going, it's 12 hours later. He will be convinced you are going to fly into a 20-knot headwind, when unfortunately you'll discover you have a 10-knot tailwind. So consequently, if you're supposed to be over Berlin at 10:17 p.m, you make damn sure you're over Berlin at 10:17 p.m. If it's a 900 bomber raid and you all arrive over Berlin at the same time, it's going to end in trouble, isn't it? Okay. So that's dead reckoning, being in the right place at the right time. That's why your navigators are such geniuses at maths. Okay, that's their skill, calculating on the move, all right, all the way through. And they can't see out, don't forget. After briefing, you hope you go straight out, you go and get some tea, you get kitted up, and you're on your way. Because if not, there's a gap. And in that gap, you have time to think. And you never wanted time to think. The aircrew that I've had the pleasure and privilege of speaking to have told me that was the worst time of all, when you know where you're going, and you've got time to think of all the possible consequences that could be coming. And remember, you've not been before. Just imagine what you're thinking. Okay. Well, tea for you is real bacon and egg. Okay? Real bacon and egg. And if you get back tomorrow morning, real bacon and egg for breakfast. It's where the famous phrase comes from. Can I have your egg tomorrow morning if you don't come back? Okay? Because the least they can do is send you off with a hearty meal. All right? Tea will be a jovial affair. You'll be laughing amongst your crew, a bit of banter. And then you'll go to the kit room. And at the kit room, you'll be starting to sober up a bit. You'll be getting quiet. You'll be starting to concentrate, making sure equipment's on properly, harnesses are done up properly. And while you're in there, there'll be a guy or a girl walking around with a box. And into that box, you put all of your personal possessions. Okay? So if you manage to persuade a lovely waff or a girlfriend to go to the cinema with you, make damn sure you take that cinema ticket stub out of your pocket, because what a gift to the German interrogators that would be if you get captured and interrogated at Lincoln or a Sleaford or a Boston or a Woodhall Spa. Cinema ticket, okay? What a gift. They already know your Lincolnshire aircrew before you've even started. Remember, it's name, rank and serial number only. You come outside, the 10-ton wagons will all be waiting for you, okay, with the lovely wafts in them, joking, laughing, cheering, okay? You're dropped off one by one at your dispersals. And strangely, the one thing they won't do is wish you good luck. They'll do everything else, they'll joke with you, but they won't wish you good luck. It was bad luck to wish you good luck. Incredibly superstitious, our aircrew. You've probably seen the pensive photographs, the black and white photographs with people sort of looking like they're about to go into the dentist's or whatever. Well, they were probably taken before they went on a raid. They were happy to have their photograph taken afterwards, and especially when they finished their tour, but not when they're going on a raid. It's tempting fate. You're tempting your own death, okay? Well, just imagine the sights, sounds and smells of 14 Lancasters all fired up. We can get 8 Merlins together here. We have the City of Lincoln fly over Just Jane while she's taxiing. It's amazing. But 14 Lancasters taxiing around those dispersals, heading for the runway in use, must have been absolutely amazing. A sight we'll never ever see again. Okay. When you get to the end of the runway controller's there. He's in his caravan, black and white checkered caravan. He gives you a green Aldis lamp signal. Your pilot will thumbs up out the cockpit and you'll thunder down the runway at full throttle, possibly even pushing through the gate. And well done, you've got off the ground first time. That's good, because it didn't always happen. Okay? And now you will circle the airfield and formate and climb, or you will head straight out and climb. Perhaps that's the best option, because basically you've got to conserve fuel. It'll conserve your fuel just in case you need it. Skegness and the Lincolnshire coast will vanish below you, and about 20 miles out, gunners, test your guns. We don't want to shoot anybody having a stroll down Skeggy Front, do you? They don't like it. Right? You keep going, you keep flying, climbing all the way, and about just over an hour into your journey, that famous phrase will echo across the intercom, enemy coast ahead. And that's when the flak starts. Who's experienced turbulence in a modern airliner? Very unnerving, isn't it? Even the most experienced flyer don't like heavy turbulence, okay? Well, this turbulence is being caused by bombs exploding outside your 16-gauge thick fuselage, all right? Chunks of metal are ripping through that fuselage, okay? You're not just worried about mechanical failure, they're trying to shoot you down, all right? But just imagine that, okay? A chunk of metal will hardly make a sound as it passes through one side of the aircraft and passes out again through the other, and we're just hoping it doesn't pass through you on its journey, okay? By the time you reach the target, you're almost used to the flak, astonishingly, but that's when it gets really dangerous. Because now you have to fly at a fixed height, at a fixed speed, absolutely straight and level, with your bomb doors open for over 30 seconds, exposing all that ordnance to those radar-controlled ground gunners below. And of course it's Berlin, that's when the coning technique comes in. Searchlights all around the city, pick on one aircraft at a time and aim at him. And if you're not out the searchlights using the famous corkscrew manoeuvre, and if you've got coned, it's extremely difficult to evade those searchlights. You've just been blinded, you've been flying in the dark, you can't see. If you're stuck in that for 10 seconds or so, you've pretty much had it, all right? Well done, bomb aimers. You dropped your bombs in the right place, at the right time, first time, and took the photograph. Don't take the photograph, doesn't count as a trip. You've got to go back and do it again. Make sure you take the photograph. All right? Prove what you've done and where you did it. Okay? And now, bizarrely, you hope all the way back the flak continues. Why? Because, of course, if the flak stops, the searchlights won't, and that's when the night fighters are after you. They know the target is Berlin now. They divide all of Germany and their occupied territory into sectors, and they muster night fighters into those sectors to wait with plenty of fuel to pick you off one by one. Well, luckily for you, no night fighter attack. You're approaching the Dutch coast. Fantastic, but you have had another problem. Your flight engineer's been aware of it, your pilot's been aware of it, your number 2 starboard tank has been ruptured by flak. You've actually been leaking fuel. He's done the best he can to draw all the fuel from that, to pump it into other tanks, to conserve as much fuel as possible. And he's worked out, with a bit of luck, you've just about got enough fuel to get you across that big black pond they call the North Sea. Just imagine having to make the decision, we've lost too much fuel, do we risk ditching and never being seen again? You have 5 days of rations, okay? Desalination tablets, water, drinking water, okay? After 5 days, you're in big trouble. And it's a big area, the North Sea. Or do you bail out over enemy territory, try and get in the hands of the resistance, or risk being a prisoner of war for the rest of the war? And remember, we have hindsight. We know how long the war lasted. They didn't, all right? Well, you're all right. You don't even have to go down to Manston, an emergency Bomber Command airfield in Fighter Command down in south. No, you get across, and as you're approaching Lincolnshire coast, you think, we're just about made it, we're just about made it. It's awfully dark down there, remember, it's blackout. You can't use the street lamps, towns and cities to navigate your way through, okay? No, none of that. In fact, it's unusually dark down there. Strange. Why? Well, while you've been gone, the airfield that you took off from has been covered in fog and has closed. So you now cannot land back at the airfield that you took off from, all right? So what happens now? Well, you get diverted to one of 3 airfields in Lincolnshire with a thing called FIDO, Fog Intensive Dispersal Operation. And the way that works is their main runway has 3 pipes down either side of it. The top pipe is perforated. It is pumped full at a rate of 70,000 gallons an hour, low-grade aviation fuel, and one poor and lucky ground crew member lights it. And now you have 2 lines of burning flame down either side of that main runway, and it's brilliant. It creates a lot of heat, burns the cold fog off at low level, and opens up the runway for your return. But hang on a second here. Starboard number 2 tank's leaking fuel, isn't it? So now you're going to have to land between 2 lines of burning flame with a leaking fuel tank and hope to God that there's no shrapnel damage on your undercarriage as you come in, because if you swerve left or you swerve right, it's going to end in disaster. Okay? And you have another problem as well, because fire creates heat and heat creates lift. So as you're coming into land, you've almost got to reduce your flaps to about 5 degrees because it tries to take you back off again. So you've almost got to slam that aircraft down on the ground to survive. All right? But your night still isn't over. You've parked up, you've taxied in. Now you have to be debriefed by the intelligence officers, the ones who take all the information down, and many of those were women, okay? Well, everything's fresh in your mind. Maybe one of your crew members was particularly scared by this. Maybe one of your crew members didn't make it through. Big blast under the bomb aimer's dome, he fell out, he's gone. So the padre will be there as well, and the padre's purpose is not to talk to you about religion. He's there as a counsellor. He'll talk you through it, and your hand will no doubt be shaking while you're drinking a very well-earned cup of tea with an even more well-earned tot of rum in it. And this is what drives me, and this is what drives us all at East Kirkby, and I think drives every one of you here today, and why we've all gathered for this. Because they had the guts, determination and courage, after exposing themselves to this just once, now knowing what it's all about, to cross that rear crew door threshold of those aircraft, whether it be a Halifax, a Lancaster, a Stirling, whatever aircraft it was, a further on average 29 times, okay? Now knowing what it's all about, they had the guts, determination and courage to do it again and again and again. And that, to me, is real courage, okay? Now, I take nothing away from the American Air Force, okay? Nothing whatsoever, all right? And as you've all seen the film Memphis Belle, all right? You've all seen the film Memphis Belle. This is the difference between the United States Army Air Force and Bomber Command. Their government had said to them, if you can survive 25 trips, and they're talking daylight bombing, absolute suicide. Bomber Command quickly switched to night bombing when they realised the attrition rate of the exposure of aeroplanes during the day. But if they get through 25, their war is over, they go back to America, and they live with their families. Bomber Command was a multinational force. Poles, Czechs, Rhodesians, Jamaicans, South Africans, Indians, Canadians, New Zealanders, Australians, as well as the Brits, a multinational force. No. If you survive a tour of 30, you get a week's leave. You're then posted to an operational training unit, an OTU, because you're now experienced, teaching crews who don't know each other on aircraft that are now not deemed fit for operations. Okay? Many said that was more dangerous than being on operations. 15% of Bomber Command losses, training accidents, fighter affiliation collisions, etc. Okay? So what I want to say is this, just to finish off. Thank you so much for coming today. There's been an awful lot of work and effort put into creating this film by Sharon and her family. Percy, of course, my hero. Enjoy the film. Take everything away. Thank you so much for caring. And thank you for listening to me. Thank you.